The Brave Girl and Her Baby, A Journey of Survival and Secrets. The Escape. The hospital was cold, its sterile white walls glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights. It was a place for healing. But to Emma Carter, it felt like an alien world. A world that might offer safety, but at a cost she wasn't sure she was ready to pay. She stood at the entrance, clutching the tiny bundle in her arms. Her heart hammered in her chest, and her legs trembled with exhaustion. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. They were numb from the long, grueling walk that had taken her through streets she didn't know, past alleyways where shadows lurked, and into the light of this hospital, her only refuge. Emma was only 10 years old, but the weight of her responsibilities had made her feel much older. Her eyes darted around nervously, scanning for any signs of danger. She didn't know if he was following her, but she didn't dare risk stopping to look back. Her mind raced, flashes of her life before the hospital swirling like a storm, her abusive stepfather, Richard Carter, and the fear that had haunted her every waking moment. She had never meant for any of this to happen. She never asked for this life of fear, this constant state of running. But she had made a promise. A promise to herself and to Noah, the tiny newborn wrapped in a thin blanket in her arms. She would protect him, no matter the cost. Noah, her brother, her responsibility. She didn't even know how she had gotten to this moment, how she had managed to carry him all the way here. It was all a blur of pain, panic, and adrenaline. But one thing was clear. She had to get them both to safety, and this hospital was her last hope. The automatic doors of St. Joseph's Hospital opened with a soft whoosh, and Emma stepped inside, her body sagging with relief. Her heart raced, though, as she approached the front desk. The nurses and doctors milling around looked at her in surprise, clearly not expecting a child, especially one so young, to walk into the hospital carrying a baby. "Sweetie, are you all right?" a nurse, Olivia Martinez, asked gently as she approached, her voice soft and full of concern. She must have been just starting her shift, as she was still holding a cup of coffee. The nurse's eyes widened as she took in the scene. The little girl, the baby, the wild look of fear in Emma's eyes. I was told to come here," Emma stammered, looking up at Olivia with eyes wide, her voice trembling. She pulled Noah closer to her chest instinctively, as if he might disappear if she let go. Olivia's heart clenched. "You're safe now," she said gently, taking a step closer to Emma. "May I see the baby?" Emma hesitated for a moment before slowly lifting the blanket to reveal the sleeping infant. Noah's face was pale, his tiny body curled in her arms. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as she saw the little one's frail form. Something was terribly wrong. "Let's get you both to a private room," Olivia said quietly, her professional tone slipping into one of quiet worry. She gently guided Emma down the hall and into a small room. Dr. Daniel Bennett, the hospital's on-call pediatrician, entered the room moments later. His expression shifted the moment he saw Emma and the baby. "Is everything all right, Olivia, Son?" Bennett asked, his voice calm but tinged with concern. Olivia nodded, but her gaze was filled with uncertainty. "I'm not sure. She's very young, and the baby, he looks too fragile." Dr. Bennett stepped forward, kneeling down to Emma's level. His warm brown eyes met hers, and for a brief moment he saw the guarded fear in her face. "Hi, Emma," he said softly. "Can you tell me what happened? How did you get here?" Emma looked down at Noah, her little brother, her hands trembling as she clutched him. The words stuck in her throat. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Her chest tightened, the fear that had plagued her for years threatening to swallow her whole. Finally, she whispered, barely above a breath, "I woke up and found him there. It hurts so much." Her voice broke on the last word. Olivia exchanged a worried glance with Dr. Bennett. There was something deeply unsettling about the situation, something that went far beyond a simple medical emergency. Emma's face was pale and she seemed lost, her mind trapped in a memory she wasn't yet ready to share. "We're going to help you, Emma," Dr. Bennett said gently, though his heart weighed heavy in his chest. He was a father himself, and he couldn't imagine the pain this young girl must have gone through. "But we need to understand more so we can help you and your brother." Emma's eyes flicked up to him, and for a moment something akin to fear and confusion flashed across her face. She was barely a child, yet here she was, holding a newborn and living a nightmare no one should have to experience. Before she could speak again, the door creaked open, and a voice called out gently, "Lily." The voice was soft, kind, and Emma looked up, startled, to see Jessica Carter, a social worker with Cedar Grove Child Services, standing in the doorway. Jessica had worked on many difficult cases, but something about this little girl, so small, so broken, pulled at her heart in a way she couldn't explain. "Sweetheart," Jessica said, her voice warm, "I'm Jessica. I'm here to make sure you and your brother are safe. You've been so brave, Lily. Emma froze, eyes wide, confused. The name. The woman had called her by the wrong name. I'm not Lily, she whispered, but she couldn't bring herself to correct the woman. Not yet. Not when everything felt so wrong. Jessica smiled gently, sensing Emma's discomfort. It's okay, sweetheart. We'll take care of everything. You're safe now. As Jessica spoke softly, Olivia and Dr. Bennett exchanged a glance, understanding the situation was far more complicated than they had initially assumed. There were things Emma wasn't saying, things she couldn't yet bring herself to explain. Emma's life, up until this point, had been a series of painful, heart-wrenching moments, but she had one thing left, her little brother, Noah. She would protect him no matter what it took, even if it meant telling the truth, no matter how painful it was. The secrets unveiled. The following days in the hospital were a blur of medical exams, quiet conversations, and a sense of growing unease. For Emma, each moment felt like a battle between relief and fear. She had come here to seek safety for herself and Noah, but now that they were here, the weight of their past hung over her like a storm cloud that refused to dissipate. As the morning sun poured through the windows of the small room, Emma lay beside Noah, who was still sleeping soundly in his crib. Her heart ached as she looked at him, her tiny baby brother who had become her whole world, despite everything they had been through, despite the terror that had shaped their lives. Noah was her hope. She had promised to protect him, and now she would do anything to keep him safe. But the question lingered in her mind. How could she protect him from what came next? The nurses had been kind to them, offering gentle smiles and comforting words. Olivia Martinez, the nurse who had first greeted Emma at the hospital, had become a steady presence in her life. Olivia often visited her, sitting with her in silence, offering a gentle hand whenever Emma needed it. Despite her young age, Emma found herself trusting Olivia, finding comfort in her unwavering support. Yet there were still so many unanswered questions. Who could she trust? Who could she turn to for the truth about what had really happened to her? And why was everything so wrong? A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Dr. Daniel Bennett standing in the doorway, his expression serious but kind. He had been checking on her regularly, and though his demeanor was professional, Emma could sense the concern in his eyes. How are you feeling today, Emma? He asked gently, stepping into the room. Emma shrugged, her eyes downcast. I'm fine, she said, her voice barely a whisper. She didn't feel fine, but she didn't know how to explain the chaos inside her mind. How could she when she still didn't understand it herself? Dr. Bennett sat down beside her on the bed, his voice calm as he spoke. I know you're feeling scared right now, but we're here to help. You and Noah are safe now. We'll take care of everything, I promise. Emma turned her head, her wide eyes meeting his. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that this hospital could protect them, that this new life could be different. But deep down, she knew she wasn't free from the shadow of her past. Not yet. What happened to my mother? Emma asked suddenly, her voice breaking the silence in the room. The question had been gnawing at her since the night she ran from home, but she had been too afraid to ask. Now, sitting here in this sterile hospital room, the pain of that missing piece of her life was unbearable. Dr. Bennett hesitated before answering, his face softening. Dr. Bennett hesitated before answering, his face softening. We don't know exactly, Emma, he said gently. We're still investigating your case, but from what we've learned, your mother is missing. Emma's heart dropped. Missing? She had always wondered why her mother was never around. She had heard whispers from her stepfather, Richard, but no one had ever told her the full truth. The fact that her mother was missing somewhere out there in the world hurt her in ways she couldn't describe. It was a loss she hadn't been able to accept, not fully. How long has she been gone? Emma whispered, her voice hoarse with the weight of the question. From what we know, it's been several years, Dr. Bennett said. There are a lot of details that we're still trying to piece together, but we'll do everything we can to find out what happened. Emma nodded silently, her gaze drifting to Noah. Her heart felt like it was being torn in two. One part of her wanted to know the truth about her mother, but the other part, the part that had lived in fear for so long, was scared of what that truth might be. Another knock on the door brought her back to the present. This time it was Jessica Cotter, the social worker from Cedar Grove Child Services. She entered the room with a warm, reassuring smile that Emma found both comforting and unsettling. Jessica had been a quiet, constant presence over the past few days, and though Emma wasn't sure if she could trust her completely, she had already started to form a bond with the woman. Hi, Emma, Jessica said softly, sitting at the edge of the bed. I know this is a lot to take in, but I wanted to let you know that we're doing everything we can to make sure you and Noah are protected. We've already started the process to get you both the care you need, and we'll make sure you're safe." Emma's chest tightened as she tried to process everything Jessica was saying. The word safe echoed in her mind. She had never felt safe in her life, not since her mother disappeared, not since Richard had come into their lives. For years, she had lived in fear, hiding from the man who was supposed to love her. Now she was supposed to believe that things could be different. "I don't want to go back there," Emma whispered, her eyes welling up with tears. "I don't want to go back to him. I can't let him hurt Noah." Jessica's expression softened, her heart aching for the little girl sitting before her. "I understand, Emma. You don't have to go back there. We'll make sure you and Noah are protected." "A promise?" Emma asked, her voice small and trembling. "I promise," Jessica said firmly. "You're not alone anymore." Emma felt a small flicker of hope, a spark of something that she hadn't felt in years. It was a fragile thing, barely a breath of hope, but it was enough. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. But even as hope began to stir within her, Emma knew that there was much more to uncover. The truth about her mother, the truth about Richard, and the truth about herself. What had happened to her family? What secrets had been buried? And most importantly, what would the future hold for her and Noah? Jessica stood and gently squeezed Emma's shoulder. "You're doing great, Emma. It's not easy, but you're doing it. We'll take it one step at a time." Dr. Bennett also stood, nodding in agreement. "And we'll be here every step of the way." As the two of them left the room, Emma turned her attention back to Noah. She held him close, her heart swelling with love for the tiny baby in her arms. No matter what came next, no matter what secrets were uncovered, she would protect him. She would keep him safe, even if it meant facing the terrifying truths that had been hidden for so long. In that moment, as she whispered a soft lullaby to Noah, Emma made a vow to herself. She would never let him experience the pain she had known. And no matter what the future held, she would find a way to make sure that they both had a chance at happiness, a chance at a life that was free from fear, free from lies, and free from the shadows of the past. But the journey ahead would be a difficult one. As Emma soon discovered, the truth was far more complicated than she could have ever imagined. The hidden truths. The days that followed felt like a blur to Emma. Each day blended into the next, filled with doctors' visits, brief conversations, and an ever-growing sense of unease. She had managed to find a small, fragile sense of comfort within the walls of St. Joseph's Hospital, a place that had become both a sanctuary and a reminder of everything she had fled from. Yet every time she held Noah close, the weight of the past felt too heavy to bear, and the questions continued to swirl relentlessly in her mind. She couldn't shake the sense that there was more to the story, more to the truth of what had happened to her mother, to her family, and to herself. She had to know, and she couldn't keep hiding in the shadow of her fears forever. But where would she even begin to look? Who could she trust now, when the people who were supposed to protect her had betrayed her? One morning, after a restless night, Emma found herself lying awake in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. Noah was asleep in his crib next to her, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. She reached out, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead, and whispered softly, "We're going to get through this. I'll make sure of it." But even as she spoke those words to her baby brother, Emma couldn't help but feel a gnawing fear in the pit of her stomach. Her stepfather, Richard Carter, was still out there. He had been the source of all her pain and fear, and now she had no idea what he would do next. The thought of him brought a wave of nausea, and she quickly pushed the thought aside. She had to stay strong, for Noah, for herself. The visit from Jessica Carter, the social worker from Cedar Grove Child Services, came later that afternoon. Jessica's gentle demeanor and unwavering support had provided Emma with small moments of peace. But today Emma couldn't ignore the question burning inside her. What had really happened to her mother? She needed to know. When Jessica entered the room, Emma sat up, holding Noah close. She watched the social worker carefully as she approached. "Hi, Emma," Jessica said softly, taking a seat by the bed. "How are you doing today?" "I'm okay," Emma answered quietly, her fingers absently stroking Noah's soft hair. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Jessica replied, her voice soothing, sensing the seriousness in Emma's tone. Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to ask the question that had been weighing on her for so long. But she couldn't wait any longer. She needed answers. "Do you know what happened to my mom?" Emma's voice cracked as she spoke the words, the pain of not knowing, of living without answers nearly overwhelming her. "Where is she? Why isn't she here?" Jessica's expression softened and she placed a hand on Emma's. I know this is hard, Emma. We don't have all the answers right now, but we are working on finding them. Your mom's case is being looked into. We're doing everything we can to find out what happened. Emma looked down at Noah, her heart breaking. I miss her, she whispered. I never even got to say goodbye. I don't understand why she's gone. Jessica's eyes welled with sympathy, but she remained composed. I know. It's not fair. And I want you to know, Emma, that you're not alone in this. We're going to help you, okay? You're safe now. But, my stepdad, Emma asked, her voice trembling. Is he still out there? Jessica looked away for a moment, her expression hardening. Yes, Emma, your stepfather is still out there, but we're doing everything we can to make sure he can't hurt you or Noah again. I promise you, he won't get near you. The fear in Emma's chest didn't quite ease, but she took comfort in Jessica's words. She was trying to protect them, trying to offer them a future free from the torment Richard had brought into their lives, but Emma couldn't shake the unease. She needed to know more. She had to uncover the truth herself. Later that evening, Daniel Bennett stopped by Emma's room. He had become a quiet but steady presence during her stay at the hospital, and although Emma didn't fully understand the medical side of what was happening to her and Noah, she trusted him. He had always spoken to her with kindness, and his gentle manner made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in a long time. How's everything going, Emma? Dr. Bennett asked as he entered the room, his warm brown eyes scanning her face for any signs of distress. I'm okay, Emma replied, her voice small. But I need to know something. What happened to my mom? Why isn't she here? Dr. Bennett's expression softened and he sat on the edge of her bed, looking directly at her. I can't give you all the answers yet, Emma, he said gently. But what I can tell you is that we are investigating your mother's disappearance. We're looking into all of it. It's important for you to know that you and Noah are safe now and we'll do everything we can to protect you. Emma's heart raced as she processed his words. The thought that someone might finally be looking into her mother's disappearance, that there might be a chance for answers, gave her a flicker of hope. Do you think she's still alive? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Bennett hesitated, his brow furrowing. I don't know, Emma, he said softly. But we're going to do everything we can to find out. And in the meantime, I want you to focus on getting better, on being with Noah. Emma nodded, though a part of her couldn't help but feel a sense of dread settle over her. The questions were growing in her mind, and she knew they wouldn't go away until they were answered. As the evening wore on, Emma tried to push the questions aside. She knew that Noah needed her strength, but every time she closed her eyes, the image of her mother's absence lingered in her mind. Where was she? And what had really happened to her? The following day, as the hospital began to settle into its usual rhythm, Emma sat beside Noah's crib, holding his tiny hand in hers. The room felt quieter now, almost peaceful, but the sense of dread she carried in her heart still lingered. She couldn't help but wonder if she and Noah were truly safe, or if the darkness of her past would one day catch up with them. But in that moment, she knew one thing for certain. She would protect Noah at all costs. With each passing day, Emma grew stronger. The hospital staff continued to surround her with kindness, offering small gestures of support that slowly chipped away at the walls she had built around her heart. Olivia, the nurse who had first taken her into the hospital, remained a constant comfort, her calming presence helping Emma feel like she could breathe again. And Jessica, the social worker, continued to reassure her, offering her the promise of a better life, one that was free from Richard's abuse. But as much as Emma wanted to believe that she and Noah could start fresh, a sense of unease never left her. The more she learned, the more questions arose, and the more she questioned, the more she felt like the answers she sought were buried beneath layers of lies. As Emma prepared to take the next steps in her journey, she knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges. But for the first time in her whole life, she felt a glimmer of hope. The future pole wasn't just a place of fear, it could be a place of safety, love, and new beginnings. And no matter how dark the road might seem, Emma was ready to walk it, one step at a time, unraveling the past. The days in the hospital began to pass more slowly. As much as Emma appreciated the safety and care she found within the walls of St. Joseph's, the questions inside her mind continued to grow louder. Each time she looked at Noah, her tiny brother who she had promised to protect at all costs, the weight of the mystery surrounding her mother and her stepfather felt unbearable. She had always known her mother's disappearance was a secret, but now, That secret was becoming something far darker, something Emma wasn't prepared for. The more she learned about the investigation into her mother's disappearance, the more she realized how little she truly knew. She sat on the edge of her hospital bed one evening, gazing out the window. The sun was setting, casting a soft golden glow across the horizon. Noah lay asleep in his crib, his little chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. Emma reached out, gently brushing a lock of his hair away from his forehead. Despite the warmth of the hospital room and the gentle hum of the machines around her, Emma felt cold inside. The questions were like a storm brewing in her chest. Where was her mother? What had happened to her? Why hadn't anyone told her the truth? Her stepfather, Richard Carter, had always been a cruel, mysterious figure. She had always known he was hiding something. But was he really responsible for her mother's disappearance? Or was there something more sinister at play? The door to her room creaked open, pulling Emma from her thoughts. She quickly wiped away the tear that had formed at the corner of her eye and looked up to see Jessica Carter, the social worker from Cedar Grove Child Services, walking in with a reassuring smile. "How are you today, Emma?" Jessica asked, her voice gentle. Emma tried to smile, but it felt forced. "I'm okay," she said quietly, her gaze flicking down to Noah. "It's just, I don't understand any of this. I don't know what happened to my mom." Jessica's face softened with understanding, and she sat down beside Emma. "I know this is hard, but I want you to know that we're doing everything we can to find out what happened to Emma. You're not alone in this." Emma nodded slowly but didn't look up. Her mind was still racing, and the weight of her questions felt almost suffocating. "I know you've been through a lot," Jessica continued, her voice soothing. "But we'll get to the truth. And when we do, you and Noah will have a safe, happy life. I promise." Emma finally looked up at Jessica, her eyes filled with fear. "But what if the truth is worse than I think?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What if my stepdad really did something terrible to her?" Jessica's expression tightened with concern. "I can't say what the truth will be, Emma, but what I can tell you is that we'll get to the bottom of it. And no matter what happens, you and Noah are safe now. You have people who care about you, people who will protect you." Emma felt a small flicker of hope ignite inside her, but the weight of the unknown still pressed heavily on her chest. She had spent so many years living in fear, and the thought of her mother's fate haunted her every day. She wanted so desperately to know the truth, but a part of her was terrified of what it might reveal. Jessica placed a hand on Emma's shoulder, offering what little comfort she could. "You've done so well so far, Emma. I know it's not easy, but you're so brave. We'll take this one step at a time, and when the time comes, we'll face the truth together." Emma closed her eyes, nodding slowly. "I just want to know what happened. I just want to understand." Before Jessica could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Emma turned to see Dr. Daniel Bennett, the pediatrician who had been checking in on her and Noah regularly. He smiled warmly as he stepped into the room, but Emma could see the concern in his eyes. "How are we doing today, Emma?" Dr. Bennett asked, his voice calm and reassuring. "I'm okay," Emma replied, her voice still tinged with uncertainty. Bennett smiled gently and walked over to Noah's crib, checking on the sleeping baby before turning back to Emma. "Noah's doing well," he said. "He's growing stronger each day." Emma's heart swelled with love as she looked down at Noah. He was her world, the one thing in her life that still made sense. But as much as she wanted to protect him, she couldn't ignore the truth that was slowly unraveling around them. "I was just talking to Jessica about my mom," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know what happened to her. I don't understand why she's gone." Dr. Bennett nodded, his expression softening. "I know, Emma, it's not easy to understand, but we're still working on the case. Your mother's disappearance is being investigated, and we'll make sure to keep you updated as we learn more." Emma's chest tightened. She had heard this before. But every time someone spoke of her mother, it was always the same vague answers, the same uncertainty. The truth felt so far out of reach, and Emma didn't know how much longer she could wait. What if my stepdad did something to her?" Emma asked, her voice shaking. "What if he's the reason she's gone?" Dr. Bennett looked at Emma, his expression solemn. "I can't say for sure, Emma, but we'll find out. We won't stop until we know the truth, and we'll make sure that no one can hurt you or Noah again." The sincerity in Dr. Bennett's words was comforting, but the pain in Emma's heart didn't subside. She had been through so much, and the fear that had gripped her for years wasn't something that could be easily undone. "We'll get through this," Jessica said softly, her voice full of conviction. "One step at a time, Emma. You're not alone. We'll face everything together." And as the conversation came to an end, Emma lay back against the pillow, her mind still reeling from everything she had just learned. She wanted so desperately to believe that things could get better, but the weight of her past was still holding her hostage. In the days that followed, Emma continued to battle the confusion and fear that clouded her mind. Every day she held on to Noah, clinging to the love she had for him as if it were the only thing left in the world. But as much as she tried to stay strong, the questions about her mother's disappearance and her stepfather's role in it refused to leave her mind. Each moment that passed felt like a battle, between the truth and the lies, between the pain of the past and the hope for a future that Emma wasn't sure she deserved. But as she stared down at Noah, the one person who depended on her completely, Emma knew that no matter what the truth turned out to be, she would fight with every ounce of her being to protect him. She had already lost so much, she couldn't lose him too. And in that moment, Emma made a vow to never let fear win again. She would uncover the truth no matter what it took, and she would do it for Noah, for the future, and for herself. The dark truth begins to surface. The days felt like they were slipping by in a haze of uncertainty. Emma continued to cling to the hope that the hospital would be the safe haven she and Noah needed, but the weight of the questions surrounding her mother's disappearance and the shadow of her stepfather, Richard Carter, loomed large in her mind. Every time she looked at Noah, her baby brother, her heart tightened with a mix of love and fear. She couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her past was about to collide with her future in ways she wasn't ready for. Noah's tiny face was her lifeline. He was the one person in her life who had always given her strength. He was the only thing that kept her going through the dark, terrifying nights she had spent running. He was the reason she had walked through the streets in a daze, carrying him in her arms, desperate to get him to safety. And now, even though they were in the hospital, safe from immediate danger, she couldn't escape the weight of the truth that was slowly creeping toward her. On the morning of the 5th day at St. Joseph's Hospital, Emma woke to the quiet hum of machines and the soft morning light spilling through the curtains. Noah was asleep beside her, his tiny fingers wrapped around her hand. She watched him for a long while, feeling the depth of her love for him. But today was different. Today, the truth was going to break open. The door creaked open, and she looked up to see Jessica Carter, the social worker, entering the room. Emma had begun to trust Jessica, even though she couldn't quite shake the feeling that the woman's name was tied to a past she wasn't ready to confront. She was, after all, Richard's sister. But Jessica had always been kind, patient, and supportive. Emma needed that right now. "Good morning, Emma," Jessica greeted warmly, her smile soft. "How are you feeling today?" Emma nodded, still lost in her thoughts. "I'm okay," she murmured, but it wasn't entirely true. She wasn't okay, she was scared. Scared of what was coming, scared of the truth that was about to be revealed. Jessica could sense Emma's unease. "I know this has been hard for you," she said, taking a seat beside the bed. "But I want you to know that we're doing everything we can to keep you and Noah safe. We're working hard on the investigation, and soon you'll have some answers. Just hang in there." Emma's eyes flicked nervously to Noah, who was still sleeping soundly. He was so small, so innocent. He deserved a life filled with love and joy, not the darkness she had experienced. But every time she thought about her mother, her heart ached. Where was she? Why hadn't anyone found her? What was her stepfather hiding? Jessica reached into her bag and pulled out a file. "I have some news for you," she said softly, her tone serious. "We've been investigating your mother's case, and we're starting to uncover some things. It's not easy, but we're making progress. I wanted to keep you updated." Emma's pulse quickened. She wanted to know. She had to know. "What have you found?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jessica hesitated for a moment before speaking, her words measured. "We've learned that your mother was involved in something that wasn't just about her disappearance. There are people connected to your stepfather, people who might have had a hand in keeping things quiet. We're still piecing it all together, but it's becoming clearer that your mother was trying to escape something. She was trying to protect you, Emma." Emma's chest tightened. Her mother, the woman who had always been her source of comfort, had been trying to protect her. But from what? And why hadn't anyone told her? Why was her stepfather so involved in keeping these secrets hidden? A chill ran down her spine as the weight of those questions sank in. What are you saying?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Jessica gave her a soft, sympathetic look. "I don't have all the answers yet, Emma, but I promise you, we'll get to the truth. You and Noah deserve to know everything, and once we do, we'll make sure you both are safe." The mention of safety gave Emma a small flicker of hope. But the fear in her heart didn't subside. She wasn't ready for what might come next. She wasn't ready to face the truth. But she knew she had to for Noah, for herself. "Thank you," Emma said softly, her voice still trembling. She wanted to believe Jessica, but the doubt lingered in her mind. Could they really protect her? Could they really uncover the truth without putting them both in more danger? Jessica stood up and smiled gently, though her eyes were filled with concern. "You're doing great, Emma. You've come a long way, and we're going to make sure you keep moving forward. We'll get through this together." As Jessica left the room, Emma sank back against the pillow, her heart heavy with the weight of the unknown. She looked at Noah, still sleeping peacefully, and made a vow to herself that no matter what, she would protect him. She would keep him safe from the secrets that had torn her life apart. Later that afternoon, Dr. Daniel Bennett came to check on Emma and Noah. His warm eyes and calm demeanor had become a comfort to Emma over the past few days, and she was grateful for the quiet strength he seemed to offer. He had always been kind, but today there was something different about him. He was no longer just a doctor. He was someone who cared, someone who wanted to help her and Noah heal. "How are we doing today?" Dr. Bennett asked, his voice soft and reassuring as he sat beside Emma's bed. "Is Noah doing okay?" Emma nodded, looking down at Noah with a mixture of love and fear. "He's fine," she said softly. "I'm just worried." Dr. Bennett gave her a gentle smile. "I understand, but I want you to know that we're doing everything we can to help you. You've been through a lot, and now it's time for you to focus on getting better. We'll take care of Noah, and we'll help you find the answers you need. You're not alone in this." Emma met his gaze, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was hope for them. Maybe there was a future waiting for her and Noah that didn't involve fear. Maybe there was a chance for something better, something she had longed for her entire life. But even as hope began to spark inside her, Emma knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The truth would hurt, the journey to safety would be long. But with Noah by her side, and with people like Dr. Bennett and Jessica working to protect them, Emma was ready to face whatever came next. As the evening wore on, Emma held Noah close, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing against her chest. For now, in this moment, they were safe, and that was enough. The struggle for truth and protection. The days blurred together as Emma spent more time at St. Joseph's Hospital, each one a fragile mix of hope and fear. She had started to trust the people around her. Jessica Carter, the social worker who had shown Emma nothing but kindness, and Dr. Daniel Bennett, whose warm presence made her feel safe even if just for a moment. They had promised to protect her and Noah, and Emma was beginning to believe them. But even in this seemingly safe space, she couldn't escape the shadows that haunted her, shadows from her past, and the cruel secrets her stepfather, Richard Carter, had kept hidden. Despite the comfort she found in the hospital's walls, Emma knew that the battle for her and Noah's safety was just beginning. And deep down, she feared that the hardest part was yet to come. On the morning of the 6th day, Emma found herself sitting in the quiet hospital room, her small hands trembling as she held Noah in her arms. The soft hum of machines and the distant sounds of nurses and doctors going about their work filled the air, but for Emma, it all felt distant. Her mind was far from the sterile white walls around her. It was filled with memories she couldn't shake, the fear, the uncertainty, and the life she had been forced to leave behind. Her thoughts were interrupted when there was a soft knock on the door. She looked up to see Jessica Carter standing in the doorway, her warm and brown eyes filled with concern. "Good morning, Emma," Jessica greeted gently, stepping into the room. "How are you holding up today?" Emma gave a small, hesitant smile. "I'm okay," she replied softly, though her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know what's going to happen." Jessica took a seat beside her, her presence a quiet comfort. "I know it's overwhelming," she said softly. "But we're making progress, and we're getting closer to finding the truth. You're doing great, Emma. You've come so far." Emma looked down at Noah, her heart aching. "I just want him to be safe," she whispered. "I don't want him to live like I did. I don't want him to be afraid." Jessica's expression softened, and she placed a reassuring hand on Emma's. "Noah will be safe, Emma. We're going to make sure of that. But you need to know that you've done everything right. You're protecting him. You're doing exactly what a mother is supposed to do." Emma's eyes welled with tears as she looked up at Jessica. She had never known what it was like to feel truly safe, not since her mother disappeared, not since Richard had entered her life. But hearing Jessica's words, hearing that she had done something right, brought a small measure of relief. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely broken. I don't know what's going to happen next, Emma said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. What if I can't keep him safe? What if I fail him? Jessica gave her a gentle smile. You won't fail him, Emma. We'll make sure you both have everything you need, but I need you to trust us. Trust me. Emma nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on Noah's peaceful face. She wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that there was still hope for a future where she and Noah could live without fear. Before Jessica could respond, the door opened again, this time to reveal Dr. Daniel Bennett, who stepped into the room with his usual calm and composed demeanor. His eyes flicked briefly to Jessica, and then he turned his attention to Emma. How are you feeling today, Emma? He asked, his voice warm and gentle. How's Noah? Emma gave him a faint smile. We're okay, she replied. I'm just scared, I guess. Dr. Bennett knelt beside her, his warm brown eyes meeting hers with understanding. It's normal to feel scared, Emma. You've been through more than anyone should ever have to, but we're doing everything we can to make sure you and Noah are safe, and we'll continue to do that until everything is sorted out. Emma nodded, but her mind kept drifting back to the questions that had been plaguing her since she arrived at the hospital. She had asked Dr. Bennett and Jessica about her mother's disappearance, but the answers had been incomplete, leaving her with more questions than she had before. What had happened to her mother? Why hadn't anyone found her? And why had Richard been so determined to keep these secrets buried? I need to know what happened to my mother, Emma whispered, her voice trembling. I need to know why she's gone. I need to know the truth. Dr. Schauser. Bennett looked at her for a long moment, his expression softening with sympathy. I understand, Emma, he said quietly. We're working on it. But the truth is complicated. There are pieces of the puzzle we still don't have, and we're trying our best to put them together. But I promise you this, we won't stop looking for answers. We'll get to the bottom of it, and we'll make sure you know the truth. Emma's heart ached at his words, but it wasn't enough. She needed more. She needed closure. She needed to know who she was, what had happened to her family, and why her life had been turned upside down. Jessica stood up, sensing the heaviness in the room. I think you've both been through enough for now, she said gently, her voice a calming presence. Why don't we take a break? We're going to take care of everything, Emma. You just need to rest. Emma nodded, her head heavy with the weight of the conversation. She didn't know how much more she could take, but she also knew that she had to keep going. For Noah, for herself. She would not stop until she found the answers she was looking for. As Jessica and Dr. Bennett left the room, Emma sat there, staring down at Noah. His tiny face was peaceful, free from the troubles that had haunted her life. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax, to breathe without the constant fear that had consumed her for so long. But even as her muscles relaxed, her mind remained alert. She couldn't forget the whispers she had overheard about her mother. She couldn't forget Richard's cruel behavior and the secrets that surrounded her family. No, the truth wasn't going to be easy to uncover, but Emma knew one thing for certain. She would never give up. She would fight not just for herself, but for Noah. And whatever happened next, whatever dark secrets came to light, she would face them head on. Because no matter what, Emma Carter would protect her family. The struggle for safety. Days passed in a blur of routine. Emma had been moved from the sterile room into a more comfortable one in St. Joseph's Hospital. She still couldn't fully wrap her mind around the reality that she was safe, that Noah was finally safe. The fear that had clung to her like a shadow for so long hadn't fully dissipated, but now she had a sliver of hope. The world outside her small room felt foreign. A bustling place of medical staff, visitors, and the constant hum of hospital machinery. It was all a strange contrast to the silence that had been her life for the past few years. Yet, amid the chaos, Emma found solace in the steady presence of Olivia Martinez, the nurse who had become her guardian angel in this unfamiliar place. Olivia had visited her every day since that first moment Emma had stepped into the hospital. At first, Emma had been distrustful, unsure if anyone could really protect her and Noah from the horrors that still haunted her. But Olivia's gentle nature, her unwavering kindness, slowly started to break through the walls Emma had built around herself. Olivia never pushed Emma to open up, but she always made it clear that Emma wasn't alone. Every day, Emma watched Olivia take care of Noah, watching as the baby's small frame filled out with the nourishment and love that had been missing in his young life. He was growing stronger, and Emma found herself growing more confident too, though still burdened with questions about what was coming next. One afternoon, as Emma sat on her bed, cradling Noah against her chest, Olivia entered with a quiet knock. How's he doing today? Olivia asked softly, her voice laced with concern as she checked Noah's temperature. He's better, Emma said, her voice low but steady. But I can't stop thinking about what comes after all this. What happens when we leave here? Olivia smiled gently, sitting down beside her. We're taking it one step at a time, Emma. You and Noah are safe here, and we'll make sure you both stay safe. But when you're ready, we'll help you figure out what comes next. You don't have to decide everything today. Emma nodded but still looked troubled. I don't want to go back to my old life, she said quietly, staring at Noah. I don't want him to ever feel the way I felt, alone, afraid. You won't be alone anymore, Emma, Olivia reassured her. We're going to make sure of that. No one's going to hurt you again. The words soothed Emma, but they didn't erase the fear that gnawed at her insides. Her mind was still racing, still tangled in the mess of the past, the betrayal, the lies, the terrifying unknowns. And then there was Richard, the man who had torn her life apart, who still haunted her thoughts. Every night she thought about him. Would he come for them? Would he track them down? Would she have to live in fear for the rest of her life? The next day, Jessica Carter, the social worker from Cedar Grove Child Services, visited again. She had become a familiar face in Emma's life, her comforting smile and calm demeanor always a welcome presence. Hey there, Emma, Jessica said as she walked into the room, holding a clipboard in one hand. How are you holding up? I'm okay, Emma replied. Her voice sounded steadier now, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed the truth. Just worried. I understand, Jessica said gently, sitting down in the chair next to the bed. I know this situation is overwhelming, but you don't have to face it alone. We're working on a plan to make sure that you and Noah are safe, okay? Emma nodded but remained silent. Jessica let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking again. I know it's hard to trust people right now, Emma, but I promise we're doing everything we can to make sure you have a future that's free of fear. Emma looked down at Noah, who had just fallen asleep in her arms. I never wanted any of this. I didn't ask for any of it. Her voice wavered. I just want to be a good sister, a good mother. I want Noah to be happy. Jessica's heart went out to her. You've done more than anyone could ever ask, Emma. You've been brave. You've protected him, and you're here now asking for help. That takes strength. Emma squeezed her eyes shut, trying to hold back tears. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was exhaustion, the weight of everything she had been carrying for so long. I just don't know how to trust anyone. Not after everything that's happened. Jessica reached out, placing a comforting hand on Emma's. It's okay to be scared, Emma. But we're going to help you. We're going to get you both the care and support you need. Will I have to go back to him? Emma asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. No, Jessica said firmly. You don't have to go back to him. That's why we're working on a plan to keep you safe. We're going to make sure you have a place where you can heal, where you can be free. Emma looked up at Jessica, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time in what felt like forever. Do you really think I can be free? I know you can, Jessica said with a soft smile. You're stronger than you know, and you're not alone anymore. As the days went on, Emma began to slowly adjust to life in the hospital. The constant fear of being found was always there, lurking in the back of her mind, but the people around her, Olivia, Jessica, Dr. Bennett, gave her something she hadn't had in so long. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future where she and Noah were safe, a future where they could laugh, play, and not worry about running away anymore. But Emma knew that she still had a long road ahead. The truth about her mother, about Richard, and about the life she had left behind was still out there waiting to be uncovered. But for now, all she could do was hold Noah close and take each day one step at a time. And with each passing day, she found herself growing stronger. Because now, she wasn't just surviving, she was learning to live again. The road to healing. Days blurred together as Emma found herself in a routine at St. Joseph's Hospital. The comfort of being in a place where she and Noah were safe was still new, but it was slowly becoming a part of their lives. It wasn't the home she had dreamed of, but it was a shelter. A temporary one maybe, but it offered something she had never truly known. Peace. The kind of peace that allowed her to think more clearly, to process the events of her life, and most importantly to begin healing. Despite the warmth from the hospital staff, Emma's mind was never fully at ease. There were always lingering thoughts, doubts, and fears. What would happen next? What would become of her and Noah? And what was she supposed to do with the guilt that seemed to follow her like a shadow? It wasn't enough that she had fled her home to protect him. She knew she would have to face everything she'd left behind sooner or later. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the hospital room, Emma sat by Noah's crib. He was sleeping soundly, his tiny chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. The quietness of the room allowed her to think, and in that silence, the walls of her heart began to crack open just a little. She thought about her mother again. Thoughts of her had been like an unanswered question that tugged at her, aching for a resolution. She had never truly understood what had happened to her mother. All she knew was that she had disappeared without a trace. Richard had always said things about her mother, accusations, cruel words, always making Emma feel like her mother had abandoned them. But Emma wasn't so sure anymore. It didn't feel right, and for the first time, she wondered if there was more to the story than she had ever known. She wasn't alone for long before Olivia came into the room, holding a tray with a cup of tea and a small plate of cookies. The nurse smiled gently, setting the tray on the bedside table. "How's Noah doing?" Olivia asked softly, sitting beside Emma. "He's doing well," Emma replied, her voice almost a whisper. "He's so strong. He makes me think I can be too." She looked down at Noah, her heart swelling with love and protectiveness. Olivia smiled, her eyes soft with understanding. "You are strong, Emma. You've done everything to protect him. And now, you're here, taking care of him. That's something." Emma hesitated before speaking again. "I've been thinking a lot about my mother, about what happened to her." Olivia paused, sensing the heaviness in Emma's voice. She didn't say anything at first, just letting the silence linger for a moment before responding in a gentle tone. "I think it's normal to wonder. You were so young when she disappeared, and you never really had the chance to say goodbye, did you?" "No," Emma whispered, the weight of her own words pulling at her chest. "I never had closure. And now I just want to know the truth. What happened to her?" "I can't say for sure," Olivia said softly, her eyes kind, but I know that people don't just disappear without a reason. There's always more to the story." Emma felt a flicker of hope at Olivia's words, but it was immediately followed by a wave of doubt. "But what if she really did leave us? What if I've been fooling myself all this time?" Olivia shook her head. "I don't think you've been fooling yourself. Sometimes, the truth is buried so deep that it takes time to find. But whatever happened, it wasn't your fault." Emma nodded slowly, looking down at Noah. He was all that mattered now, more than the past, more than the secrets that surrounded her. He was her future, and she would do anything to make sure he never had to feel the same way she did, lost, alone, afraid. As Olivia stood up to leave, she placed a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder. "We'll figure this out together, Emma." One step at a time, Emma watched her leave, the words lingering in the air like a promise. She didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. She could face whatever came next, as long as she had Noah by her side. The following morning, Emma was in the middle of feeding Noah when a knock sounded on the door. It was soft, respectful, but Emma still felt a tightness in her chest as she looked up. The past few days had been peaceful, but there was always that underlying anxiety about what would happen next. She had learned to accept that the truth was waiting to be uncovered, but a part of her wished it would all go away, as if she could wake up and find that it had all been a bad dream. "Come in," Emma called, her voice steady but still holding a hint of caution. To her surprise, it wasn't Olivia or Jessica who entered, but a man she didn't recognize. He was tall, with neatly combed hair and a professional but warm demeanor. His eyes were kind, but there was something about his presence that made Emma uneasy. He was dressed in a suit, and his confident stride suggested he was someone important. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You must be Emma Cotter." Emma nodded, her heart beginning to race. She had no idea who this man was or what he wanted, but the way he looked at her made her feel exposed, as if he could see straight through her. "I'm Detective Michael Davis," the man continued. "I've been working on your case. How are you doing today?" "I'm fine," Emma replied, keeping her gaze on Noah. "Is everything okay?" Detective Davis nodded slowly. "I just wanted to check in. There's been progress in the investigation, and we're starting to piece together some of the details." Emma's pulse quickened. "What details?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The truth about your mother, Emma," Detective Davis said softly, stepping closer. "We've been following leads, and we're starting to uncover some things. It's going to take time, but we're getting closer to finding out what really happened." Emma's heart stopped. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth, but it felt like everything she had been holding inside for so long was finally coming to the surface. What do you mean? What have you found? I can't go into specifics yet, Detective Davis said, his voice low. But we'll be in touch. I promise we're doing everything we can. Emma swallowed hard, trying to keep herself composed. The weight of the unknown was unbearable. She had spent so many years wondering what had happened to her mother, what kind of life she had lived. And now, the truth was within reach, but what would it mean for her? What if the truth was even worse than she imagined? Days passed in a blur of hospital visits, therapy sessions, and quiet conversations. The walls of St. Joseph's Hospital had become a strange comfort to Emma. Despite the sterile environment and the unknowns that loomed over her, she felt safer there than she had anywhere else. Noah, still so small, still so fragile, was her anchor. As long as she held him close, she could endure anything. But even as the days passed in the safety of the hospital, Emma knew that they were not free from the shadows of their past. The truth about her mother's disappearance, about her stepfather's cruelty, and about everything she had been running from, still loomed in the distance. Every conversation she had with Detective Davis left her with more questions than answers, and every moment of peace was haunted by the fear of what would happen when the truth finally came to light. Her mind was in turmoil when Detective Davis came back to visit her a few days later. This time he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, someone Emma had never seen before. She was older, with gentle eyes and a calm demeanor that made Emma feel slightly more at ease. "Good morning, Emma," Detective Davis greeted her. "I know this is a lot, but I wanted to introduce you to someone who might be able to help with your case." The woman smiled warmly. "Hi, Emma. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I work with the child advocacy team. We've been following your case closely, and I'm here to support you, whatever you need." Emma nodded slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment. This was the team that would help her and Noah find justice. But something in Emma's gut twisted. What if this was all just another step in a long, painful process? What if the answers they were searching for were ones she didn't want to hear? "Thank you for helping us," Emma said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She was grateful, she knew that, but there was a part of her that was terrified of what would come next. Sarah took a seat beside her, looking at her with understanding in her eyes. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure you and Noah are safe," she said. "And we're going to make sure that your stepfather is held accountable for what he's done." Emma's heart skipped a beat at the mention of Richard. His name had always been a source of terror, and even now the thought of him haunted her. She had seen him at his worst. The anger, the violence, the fear he instilled in her every day. And now, he was the reason she was here, the reason she had to fight for her and Noah's future. "I'm scared," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. "What if he comes after us again? What if we're never safe?" Sarah reached over and placed a hand on Emma's. "You're not alone anymore, Emma. We're going to protect you and Noah, and we're going to make sure Richard can't hurt anyone else." The weight of those words settled heavily on Emma's shoulders. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they could break free from the nightmare that had been her life for so long. As the days went by, Emma and Noah continued to receive the care and attention they needed. Olivia, the nurse who had been with them from the beginning, checked in on them every day, offering words of encouragement and small gestures of kindness. Emma was starting to open up more, allowing herself to lean on the people who cared for her. But the truth about her mother and the darkness that surrounded her stepfather still weighed heavily on her mind. One afternoon, Sarah came to visit Emma with a file in hand. She sat down beside Emma, her expression serious. "We've made some progress," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "We've found some documents that might shed light on what happened to your mother." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The truth was finally starting to emerge, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. But there was no turning back now. "Your mother's disappearance wasn't just an accident," Sarah continued. "We've uncovered evidence that points to something much more sinister. Richard was involved in more than just abuse. There are records, financial, personal, that suggest he was trying to hide something about your mother." Emma's heart raced. This was it, the answers she had been waiting for, but they were darker than she could have ever imagined. "Do you mean?" Emma's voice trailed off as she tried to process what Sarah was saying. "I'm afraid so," Sarah said gently. "It looks like your mother may have been a victim of something far worse than we realized. Richard wasn't just abusive, he was hiding a secret that could have put your mother in danger." Emma's mind was spinning. She wanted to scream, to run away from the truth, but she couldn't. She had to know what happened. She had to understand. "What happened to her?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah took a deep breath before answering. We don't have all the answers yet, but we know that your mother didn't leave voluntarily. Richard kept her hidden, kept her from getting help. He made sure no one would ever find out the truth. The weight of those words crashed down on Emma like a tidal wave. The man who had claimed to love her mother, the man who had promised to take care of her and Noah, had been hiding the truth all along. He had taken everything from her, not just her childhood, but her family's future. And now the truth was coming out. Slowly, piece by piece, but it was enough to start the fight for justice. As the investigation into Richard continued, Emma's life began to change in ways she hadn't anticipated. The hospital staff, along with Sarah and Detective Davis, made sure Emma and Noah were safe. They worked together to create a plan for Emma's future, one that didn't involve running from her past. But the process was long, and the fear of what was to come never quite left Emma's heart. Then, one day, she received a call from Sarah. She could hear the determination in her voice. Emma, Sarah said, we've made a breakthrough. We have a court date. We're going to take Richard down. He won't hurt you or Noah again. Emma felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. The road ahead would be difficult, but she wasn't alone. She had people who cared, people who were willing to fight for her and Noah. The darkness of her past was slowly being revealed, and the future was becoming clearer. As Emma stood beside Noah, looking out the window of her hospital room, she felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. The fight ahead wouldn't be easy, but she wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in a long while, she knew she wasn't alone. And for the first time in her life, Emma believed in a future. A future where she and Noah could be free. In the coming days, Emma would face the courtroom, the truth, and the challenges ahead. But she was ready. With the support of the people who loved her, she would fight for the justice she and Noah deserved. And when all was said and done, Emma would make sure that Noah would never know the kind of fear and pain she had experienced. She would protect him no matter what it took. Together, they would find a new beginning. A beginning free from the shadows of the past. A new hope. The courtroom was filled with the murmurs of spectators, the sound of chairs shifting, and the rustle of papers. It felt like the calm before a storm. Emma sat at the front, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her heart raced with anticipation. Her gaze locked on the wooden podium where Richard, her stepfather, stood. The man who had been a nightmare for as long as she could remember was about to face the consequences of his actions. But Emma couldn't quite shake the feeling of uncertainty that lingered in the pit of her stomach. Noah, still so small and innocent, was at her side, safely tucked in her arms. She could feel his steady heartbeat against her chest, a comforting rhythm that grounded her in this turbulent moment. His presence was the one thing that kept her moving forward, kept her fighting. Everything she did now, she did for him. The judge entered, the room quieting in an instant. His stern expression looked out over the room before focusing on the case at hand. The trial had been a long and emotional journey. The evidence against Richard was undeniable. His history of abuse, the hidden secrets about Emma's mother, and the threats he had made, all of it had led to this moment. But even as Emma watched, a part of her still couldn't believe it was real. For so long, she had been trapped in a world of fear, uncertainty, and lies. But now, the truth was coming to light, and there was no turning back. The proceedings began, and Sarah Mitchell, the social worker who had been with Emma from the beginning, rose to present her case. She spoke with authority and compassion, recounting the horrors Emma had suffered at the hands of Richard and the strength it had taken for the young girl to finally escape and seek safety. Emma listened carefully, her heart swelling with gratitude for Sarah's unwavering support. Then it was time for the defense. Richard's lawyer stood and began to speak, attempting to cast doubt on the evidence and discredit Emma's testimony. He argued that Emma was a confused child, making wild accusations about her stepfather. But Emma knew the truth. She had lived it. She could feel the eyes of the courtroom on her, but she didn't flinch. This was her moment. This was the moment where everything changed. Finally, it was time for Emma to take the stand. Her legs felt like lead as she stood up, but Sarah was right beside her, offering a steady hand of support. The walk to the witness stand felt like an eternity, but Emma forced herself to focus on the task at hand. She had come so far, and she wasn't going to let fear hold her back now. As she took her seat, she looked across the room at Richard. His face was cold, expressionless, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of recognition, maybe, or perhaps fear. But Emma didn't need to see it. She didn't need his approval. All she needed was the truth. The prosecutor asked Emma to speak about her experiences, to explain the abuse she had suffered. She paused for a moment, the memories flooding her mind. It was hard to find the words, but she pushed through, telling her story in a quiet, steady voice. She spoke of the constant fear, the pain, and the promise she had made to herself and Noah. "I didn't want this life," Emma said, her voice breaking slightly. "I never asked for it, but I couldn't let him hurt Noah. I promised I would protect him, no matter what." Her eyes met Richard's for the first time, and for a moment she saw a flicker of something, regret maybe, or was it anger? It didn't matter. All that mattered was that she was here telling her truth, and she would make sure Richard couldn't hurt anyone again. The defense lawyer tried to undermine Emma's words, but Emma held strong. Her story was clear. She had nothing to hide. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. Her truth was enough. After a tense silence, the judge looked up from his papers. He gave a brief nod to the prosecutor before speaking in a calm yet firm voice. "Richard Carter, you are charged with multiple counts of child abuse and endangerment. The evidence is clear and your actions have been unconscionable. I hereby rule in favor of the plaintiffs. You are to be remanded to the custody of the state for further legal proceedings." A wave of relief washed over Emma. She could hardly believe it. Richard, the man who had tormented her for so long, was finally going to face justice. For the first time in her life, she could breathe. But even as the room erupted in murmurs of approval, Emma's focus remained on Noah. She held him close, feeling the warmth of his tiny body against her. She was going to make sure that nothing, no one would ever take him away from her. He would grow up safe, loved, and protected, surrounded by the people who truly cared for him. The trial had been a long and exhausting process, but now it was over. The weight that had burdened Emma for so long was finally beginning to lift, and though the journey had been filled with heartache, it had also brought about something she had never imagined. Hope. In the days following the trial, Emma was allowed to stay at a foster home run by a couple who had been fostering children for many years. Mrs. Rivera, the kind-hearted woman who had extended an invitation to Emma, had become a beacon of light in her life. The house was warm and filled with the laughter of children who had once known fear, just like Emma, but who now had a place to call home. Emma had her own room now, a cozy little space filled with soft blankets, stuffed animals, and a small crib for Noah. It was everything she had never known. The freedom to be a child again, to play, to laugh, to dream. Emma had never thought that was possible. But now, she had a future where she could protect Noah, where she could raise him in safety, and where they could both experience love and joy. The world had once seemed so dark and full of uncertainty, but now, there was light, there was hope. As Emma sat in her room one evening, looking out the window at the setting sun, she thought about how far she had come. The girl who had once been lost in the shadows of fear was now standing in the light. She was no longer alone. She had a family, one that had chosen her, one that loved her and Noah without condition. "Things are going to be different now," Emma whispered to herself, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "We're going to be okay." No matter what the future held, Emma knew one thing for certain: she would always protect Noah. And for the first time, she truly believed that they both had a chance at happiness, a chance at a life that was free from fear, free from lies, and free from the shadows of the past. Emma's journey had been long, filled with heartbreak and fear, but it had also been filled with moments of triumph and hope. And as she looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully in her arms, she knew that the hardest part was over. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be theirs to walk together. For the first time in her life, Emma had a chance to build something real, a family, a future, and she would cherish it every single day, for herself and for Noah. The story of Emma and Noah was just beginning, and the world, it seemed, was finally offering them a chance at happiness, a chance to heal, to live, and to love.